My boyfriend's friends abandoned me 280 miles from home to build some character. They expected me to panic. They expected me to call Isaac crying, apologize for being difficult, and beg them to come back. Instead, they accidentally gave me the first peaceful morning I'd had in years, and eventually, an entirely different life. My name is Cheryl Shands. I'm 35 years old, and I've been a mechanic since I was 18. Cars have always made more sense to me than people. A broken engine doesn't pretend it isn't broken. It gives you symptoms. You diagnose the problem, and either you can fix it or you can't. People lie. My boss, Larry, was living proof. He was 50, loud, lazy, and somehow convinced that shouting my name across the garage every 10 minutes counted as management. Whenever I solved something difficult, Larry would stroll over to the customer afterward. Told my team exactly where to look. Sure, the man couldn't change a tire without watching a tutorial, but he called me kid and took credit for my work like he was doing me a favor by employing me. So between Larry and my boyfriend, Isaac Lawson, constantly complaining that I never wanted to do anything, I wasn't exactly living my dream. I worked too much, got appreciated too little, and somehow I was still the problem because after 10 hours around impact guns and angry customers, I preferred silence to dinner parties. Every year, Isaac and his friends took what they called a bonding retreat. I'd avoided it for 3 years. This year, Isaac wouldn't let it go. Everyone wants you there this time, he told me. I laughed. Everyone? Cheryl. That tone meant the discussion was already over. So Saturday morning, I climbed into Mason's SUV with Isaac and 5 of his friends. Within an hour, I regretted it. The whispers started almost immediately. Whenever I looked toward the back seats, someone was smirking. Whenever I joined the conversation, everyone suddenly became fascinated with the scenery. Isaac kept giving me this strange, overly cheerful smile. Something felt staged. Hours later, my phone lost service. Pavement became gravel. Gravel became dirt. Eventually, we were crawling down what looked like an abandoned logging road. "You're sure this is a cabin?" I said, "and not the opening scene of a documentary about 6 missing tourists?" Normally, Isaac would have laughed. Nobody did. They exchanged looks instead. That should have told me everything. The cabin itself was beautiful in an unsettling way. 2 bedrooms, old wooden floors, dusty curtains, a stone fireplace, and nothing around us except trees. At dinner, the inside jokes continued. Whenever I asked what was funny, Mason said, "Nothing." Then he grinned. Isaac was strangely affectionate. Too affectionate. "You having fun?" he asked. "I'm enjoying the fresh air and obvious conspiracy." He rolled his eyes. "Please try to enjoy yourself." "For me?" "Sure." Even we both knew I didn't mean it. That night, lying beside him, I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was waiting for something. I found out what the next morning. I woke late. The cabin was silent. "Isaac?" "Nothing." I walked into the main room. Empty. Then I noticed something worse. Their bags were gone. Their jackets were gone. Every piece of luggage except mine had disappeared. On the kitchen table sat a bright yellow sticky note. 3 words were written across it. "Build some character." Underneath was a smiley face. I stared at it. Then I heard laughter outside. I rushed toward the window. Mason's SUV was bouncing down the dirt road. Isaac sat in the passenger seat. Someone in the back was holding up a phone, filming. They were laughing. Actually, laughing. I ran onto the porch. "Are you serious?" The SUV kept moving. For 1 second, Isaac turned around. Our eyes met through the rear window. Then the vehicle disappeared around the trees. I stood barefoot in the dirt with that stupid note crushed inside my fist. My phone had no signal. I didn't know the roads. And home was roughly 280 miles away. That's when all those whispers suddenly made sense. They'd planned everything. They wanted me frightened, humiliated. Maybe they expected me to walk until I found service. then call Isaac and admit I'd learned some lesson about being more adventurous. Instead, I went back inside. There was food: eggs, soup, canned vegetables, coffee. Enough to survive comfortably for several days. I sat on the porch and stared into the trees. And something strange happened. My anger began disappearing. There was no Larry screaming my name, no customers demanding impossible repairs, no Isaac telling me I needed to socialize more. Nobody needed anything from me. For once, there was just quiet. I made coffee using an old percolator and drank the entire cup while it was still hot. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done that. "All right," I whispered. I looked at the yellow note. "You wanted character?" I folded it and put it in my pocket. "Let's build some." Over the next day, I explored. The cabin had tools, firewood, flashlights, fishing poles, and several dusty journals left by previous owners. One journal contained a hand-drawn map showing a small town about 15 miles south. Useful. But I wasn't ready to leave yet. That evening, while sitting on the porch, I noticed a white light moving between the trees. A flashlight. Someone was approaching. I grabbed a wrench. A tall, older man with a gray beard eventually emerged. He stopped when he saw me holding it. "Evening," he said. "Didn't mean to scare you." His name was Earl. He lived several miles away and had noticed smoke coming from the cabin. When I explained what Isaac and his friends had done, Earl stared at me for several seconds. Then he shook his head. "You picked the wrong crowd." Despite myself, I laughed. They called it a joke. Earl glanced toward the peaceful woods. "Doesn't look like you're suffering much. Don't tell them." He smiled. Before leaving, Earl gave me batteries, a flashlight, and a few canned goods. Then he pointed behind the cabin. "There's an old shed back there. Original owners kept tools in it. Roof's bad, so be careful." The following morning, curiosity won. I pushed through weeds until I found the shed. Its door barely hung from one hinge. Inside smelled like dust, oil, and rotting wood. Then I saw the tarp. Something large was underneath. I pulled it away and froze. A Ford Mustang, mid-70s, flat tires, rust everywhere, cracked headlight, dust thick across the hood. But underneath all that neglect was something beautiful, something worth saving. Keys hung from a nail beside the door. I picked them up and looked back at the car. For the first time since that SUV disappeared down the road, I smiled. Not because I'd proven Isaac wrong, not because I had some revenge plan, because suddenly I had something I hadn't felt in years: excitement. I ran my hand across the Mustang's dusty hood. "You and me," I whispered. "We're both overdue for a rebuild." I didn't know it yet, but getting that engine running would eventually give me a way into town. And once I reached that town, Isaac's stupid little prank would stop being the story of how my boyfriend abandoned me. It would become the story of how I disappeared from the life he'd expected me to return to. The next morning, I was awake before sunrise. Not because of an alarm, because I couldn't stop thinking about that Mustang. I took Earl's flashlight and headed straight to the shed. When I pulled the tarp away again, the car somehow looked even worse in daylight. Flat tires, rust around the wheel wells, a cracked headlight, dust thick enough to write my name across the hood. But underneath all of it, I could see what the car used to be. More importantly, what it could be again. I popped the hood. The engine was filthy and partially seized, but it wasn't hopeless. "You've had better days," I muttered. Then I smiled. "Same." The gas in the tank smelled like varnish. I drained what I could, replaced the filter, cleaned the plugs, checked the belts, and dug through the shed for anything useful. There was an old toolbox under the workbench. Most of the tools were rusted but usable. I spent the entire day working. Nobody interrupted me. Nobody told me to hurry. Nobody took credit afterward. By evening, my arms were streaked with grease and my back hurt. I hadn't felt that satisfied in years. The cabin still had weak grid power, enough for an ancient battery charger I'd found in the shed. I hooked everything up and left it overnight. The next morning, I installed the battery and turned the key. Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. Come on. I cleaned the carburetor, checked the plugs again, tapped the starter, and turned the key. The engine coughed. A cloud of gray smoke burst from the exhaust. I laughed. That's it. Come on. Another turn. Another cough. Then the Mustang roared. Rough. Uneven. Loud enough to send birds flying from the trees. But alive. I stood beside it, grinning like an idiot. For years, I'd been fixing cars under Larry's name, making his business successful while he treated me like replaceable labor. Out here, nobody was watching. Nobody was applauding. And somehow that made the moment feel more mine. Over the next several days, I worked on the brakes, aired the tires, cleaned the interior, patched what I could, and scavenged usable parts from around the property. Eventually, I trusted the Mustang enough to follow the map I'd found in the journals. 15 miles later, dirt became pavement. Then I saw a gas station, a general store, a diner with a flickering open sign. My phone suddenly exploded with notifications. 3 bars, 47 messages, 13 missed calls. Most were from Isaac. I didn't open them. Not yet. I parked outside the diner. A woman in an apron stepped outside and stared at the Mustang. You drive that thing up here? From the cabin north of town. She looked at my grease-covered clothes. You fix it yourself? Brought it back from the dead. Inside, I ordered the cheapest breakfast on the menu. Coffee, eggs, bacon, toast. It tasted incredible. Eventually, the waitress asked why I was staying at the cabin. My boyfriend and his friends left me there. She stopped pouring coffee. Left you? Character building exercise? She stared at me. Then she laughed. Not at me. At the absurdity. The diner owner overheard us. His name was Rick. You really a mechanic? He asked. Since I was 18. He pointed toward the back. I've got a Chevy pickup that hasn't run right in months. Can't afford what the dealership wants. I'll look at it. Tomorrow morning? Sure. He nodded. I'll pay cash and feed you breakfast. Best job offer I've had in years. The pickup had a cracked fuel line and a bad gasket. I had it running within an hour. Rick stared at me. You looking for work? Apparently, I was. Word spread quickly. A man from the gas station brought me his Jeep. Then someone from the general store needed a van repaired. A hardware store owner named Tom let me use a small shed behind his business as a workspace. Within days, I had more work than I could handle. But something was different. People thanked me. They shook my hand. They looked me in the eye. Nobody called me kid. Nobody stood behind me pretending they'd diagnosed the problem. I hadn't realized how starved I'd become for basic respect. Then, one afternoon, I finally opened Isaac's messages. The first ones were almost playful. Okay, very funny. You proved your point. Come back. Then, you're really milking this. Then, can you at least answer so everyone stops asking where you are? A day later, you're making me look bad. Then, this is getting embarrassing. And finally, if you stay there, don't bother coming back. We're done. I stared at that last message. Then something unexpected happened. I laughed. Isaac still thought he was threatening me with losing a life I no longer wanted. I put my phone away and returned to work. A few weeks passed. I arranged to rent the cabin from its owner. Cheap. Quiet. Mine. Then one afternoon, I drove up the dirt road after work and saw an SUV parked outside. My stomach tightened. Isaac, Mason, and several of the same friends who'd left me there. They stood near the porch like they'd arrived to collect something they'd forgotten. I shut off the Mustang. Isaac stared at the car, then at my work shirt, then at me. You've got to be kidding. I stepped out. Nice seeing you too. He marched toward me. We didn't think you'd actually stay. Neither did I. Okay, you made your point. I looked toward Mason. He folded his arms. It was a joke that went too far. A joke? I pointed down the road. You abandoned me 280 miles from home and filmed yourselves laughing while you drove away. Mason rolled his eyes. We left food, Very thoughtful. Isaac stepped closer. Can we stop doing this? People keep asking where you are. This whole thing is embarrassing. There it was. Not, I miss you. Not, I'm sorry. Embarrassing. To who? To me, Cheryl. I stared at him. For once, I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. Isaac softened his voice. Just come home. I glanced at the cabin, then at the Mustang, then toward the road leading back to town, where people were already expecting me at work tomorrow. I am home. His face changed. Don't start that. I'm not starting anything. You have a life back there. Had. A job. Had. Us. That one almost made me laugh. What exactly is us, Isaac? His jaw tightened. You're seriously going to throw away our relationship over one stupid prank? No. I stepped closer. You threw it away when you got into that SUV. Nobody spoke. Isaac looked genuinely stunned. This was supposed to teach you something. It did? His eyes narrowed. What? I pulled the yellow sticky note from my wallet. I'd kept it. Build some character. I held it between two fingers. You wanted me to build character. I folded it again. So I did. Mason muttered. Unbelievable. Isaac's voice rose. You think you're better than us now? No. I looked directly at him. I just finally stopped believing I was worse. That silenced him. You wanted me to panic, I said. You wanted me to call you so you could rescue me and tell everyone I'd learned my lesson. Isaac didn't deny it. You wanted me stronger? His expression flickered. Fine. I nodded. You got what you wanted. For a second, hope crossed his face. Then I finished. I'm stronger now. Just not for you. His face collapsed. Isaac stared at me like he was looking at a stranger. Maybe he was. Finally, he turned toward the SUV. You'll regret this. I watched him walk away. No, I said quietly. He stopped. I smiled. I think regretting things was part of my old life. Doors slammed. The engine started. For the second time, I watched that SUV disappear down the same dirt road. But this time, nobody had abandoned me. They were simply leaving my property. I walked onto the porch and looked at the Mustang. The engine ticked softly as it cooled. Tomorrow morning, people in town would be waiting for me. And for the first time, I understood something Isaac never had. I hadn't survived being left behind. I'd been given somewhere worth staying. 6 months later, almost everything about my life had changed. The cabin wasn't temporary anymore. It was mine. The owner was a retired logger who seemed genuinely shocked when I asked if he'd consider selling. You actually want that place? I do. He laughed. If you can stand that much quiet, it's yours. The price was low enough that I thought I'd misheard him. I signed the papers that same week. Then I mentioned the Mustang. He stared at me. That old thing still exists? More than exists. It runs. He laughed even harder. If you brought that hunk of metal back to life, keep it. Title should be in the glove box. Just like that, I owned the cabin and the car that had carried me into my new life. Work had changed, too. Rick introduced me to Dale, an older mechanic who'd operated a one-man garage for years and was finally ready to slow down. We understood each other almost immediately. Same work ethic. Same dry humor. Same irritation with customers who thought duct tape was a permanent repair. After I'd helped him for several weeks, Dale made me an offer. You want to run this place with me? I looked around his garage. It wasn't fancy. 2 lifts, battered tool cabinets, stained concrete floors. It was perfect. We split the expenses and renamed it Iron Ridge Auto, after the trail outside town. We never needed advertising. Word traveled. Within a month, people were driving in from neighboring towns because they'd heard about the woman who could diagnose an engine by listening to it for 30 seconds. For the first time in my career, my name was attached to my own work. No Larry stepping in afterward. No one calling me kid. No one treating competence like something I'd accidentally stumbled into. I didn't realize how much that mattered until I finally had it. My old life occasionally found ways to reach me. A mutual acquaintance told me Isaac had started explaining our breakup to everyone. According to his version, I'd had some kind of breakdown. I'd abandoned my responsibilities. I'd run away because I couldn't handle the pressure of a serious relationship. Apparently, Isaac had tried everything to help me. That part almost made me laugh. For about 5 minutes, I considered correcting him. Then I looked around the garage. Customers waiting. Appointments booked. My name painted across the front window beside Dale's. What exactly did I need to defend? Isaac could keep his version. I had a life. Months passed. The Mustang got better. So did the cabin. I repaired the porch, replaced several windows, fixed the fireplace properly, and turned the old shed into a small personal workshop. Sometimes Earl stopped by. He never announced himself. He'd simply appear on the porch carrying coffee or something he'd found at a hardware sale. One afternoon, he looked around at everything I'd repaired. Not bad for someone who got stranded. I prefer accidentally relocated. He laughed. You ever miss the city? I thought about Larry, traffic, Isaac. The constant feeling that I was disappointing somebody by simply being myself. No. And I meant it. When the 1-year anniversary of that cabin trip approached, I decided to mark it. Not because I wanted to celebrate being abandoned, because I wanted to celebrate what came afterward. I invited the people who'd helped me without demanding anything in return. Rick came from the diner. Dale closed the garage early. Tom brought enough food for 20 people. Earl arrived carrying a folding chair even though I had plenty. By sunset, there were cars parked along the dirt road and burgers cooking on the grill. People were laughing. Kids were running around the yard. Music played quietly from the porch. At one point, I stepped away from the grill and simply watched. A year earlier, I'd stood in almost the exact same spot barefoot, holding a yellow sticky note while Isaac disappeared down the road laughing. I'd thought I'd been humiliated. Now I understood something. Humiliation only works if the people humiliating you still have the power to define you. They didn't anymore. My phone buzzed on the porch table. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I opened the message. I heard you bought that place up there. Another message appeared. I hope you're happy. No name. Didn't need one. Isaac. I stared at the screen. There was a time when those words would have sent my mind racing. Was he angry? Was he sorry? Did he miss me? Was he trying to reopen the door? Now I felt almost nothing. I looked toward the yard. Rick was arguing with Dale about the correct way to grill a burger. Tom was laughing so hard he could barely speak. Earl sat near the porch watching everyone with that quiet expression of his. Behind them was my Mustang. Beyond that was my cabin. My home. I looked back at Isaac's message, then typed, I am. 2 words. No explanation. No revenge speech. No attempt to make him understand. I sent it. Then I deleted the number. Earl appeared beside me a few minutes later. Everything okay? I put the phone down. Yeah. He glanced toward it but didn't ask. That was another thing I liked about these people. They knew how to leave silence alone. Later that evening, after everyone had eaten, Dale raised his drink. To Cheryl, I groaned. Don't. He ignored me. A year ago, some idiots left her in the woods. Everyone laughed. And somehow we ended up with the best mechanic this town's had in 20 years. 20, Rick shouted. You're still alive, Dale. Exactly. More laughter. I shook my head, but I was smiling. Then Earl raised his drink. To bad directions. That one got me. Because a year ago, Isaac thought leaving me here would frighten me into appreciating the life I'd had. Instead, it gave me enough distance to realize I didn't want that life back. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone on the porch. The Mustang was parked near the shed. Crickets filled the darkness. The cabin lights glowed behind me. I took the original sticky note from my wallet. It was wrinkled now, the ink slightly faded. Build some character. I stared at it and laughed. They'd meant those words as an insult. a punishment, proof that something about me needed fixing. Instead, they became a reminder of how completely Isaac had miscalculated. I folded the note and slipped it back into my wallet. Isaac and his friends wanted me stranded. Instead, I found a home. They wanted me desperate. Instead, I found work that belonged to me. They wanted me to beg for a ride back. Instead, I restored my own. And the funniest part? They really did teach me a lesson, just not theirs. Sometimes the moment someone leaves you behind is the exact moment you discover you were never supposed to follow them in the first place.